Today I want to talk a little bit about political merit and probably like what's morality got to do with that, right? So, I mean, we're probably in agreement that we want politicians to have merit, right? That is, we want politicians who can do the job that they've been elected to or appointed to do. We want politicians who have demonstrated that they have the relevant skills and talents. Right? But just what are those relevant skills and talents, right? Now at this point you might think I'm going to actually answer, but remember, I'm a philosopher, right? We don't provide answers, we just give you more questions and ways to ask other questions, right? All right. So what are the relevant skills and talents, and just what's morality got to do with that, right? But in order to think about this, we want to step back a bit and think about merit in other fields, right? So let's go as far, from philosophy and politics as we can. Think about NFL or NBA players, right? What makes somebody an excellent NBA player, an excellent NFL player, etc. Right? Or think about top researchers in any of your fields, right? What makes them a top researcher, right? Well, probably not anything to do with morality. I mean, not a week goes by without some professional sports player being arrested and charged with some crime, right? Or again, think of these top researchers in your field. Now, I'm not saying that any of my colleagues are immoral equals, although none of them are in the room here today, so draw your own conclusions about that. But I've worked elsewhere, right? And I doubt that I'm the only one who's ever interacted with top scholars in the field who produce some of the best research in the field, but who you wouldn't even allow to watch your dog for half an hour, right? So, there it doesn't sort of look, right? So, now, what makes political merit different, right? And is it related to morality at all? Now again, as any good philosopher, I have no real answers, just a few questions, and questions that arise out of a debate over the role of morality in the political sphere that played out in China in the 3rd century BCE. Right? So I'll introduce a couple of philosophers there. Right? There's this guy, Xunzi, perhaps the greatest early Confucian philosopher. Right? And his purported student, Han Feizi, who, just like most of my students, thought his teacher was wrong about pretty much everything. Right? Now, they do agree. They both agree that political merit is essential to the success of the state and the people inside it. Right? But they took very different positions on the fundamental question of what constitutes politically relevant merit. Right? For Xunzi, this Confucian thinker, all political merit reduces in some fashion, direct or indirect, into moral merit, moral qualities, moral goodness. Right? For Han Fei, on the other hand, whatever constitutes political merit, it ain't got anything to do with morality. Right? So let's start with the student here, Han Feizi. Right? He says, look, being an excellent political leader is actually really analogous to being an excellent coach, an excellent scholar, right, etc. Right? And what is it that's shared amongst the sort of conceptions of excellence of a coach, a scholar, a player, right, or a politician on his account? Well, he thinks it's task-specific competencies, right? That is, an excellence at some particular task, right? So what makes an excellent NBA player? Well, it's somebody who's able to take this ball and put it in that net, right, really reliably, and prevent the opponents from being able to do the same, right? An excellent researcher is someone who can produce this innovative research, pushing their field forward. Right? And note, there's no expectation of transference here, right? There's no expectation that a good coach, right, would be a good cancer researcher or vice versa. Right? They develop and rely on very different skill sets. Right? And so what Hanfei wants to look at is like, what are the skill sets of someone with political merit, of an excellent politician? Right? Well, on his account, it's someone who understands features about the world around us and the constraints that the world places on us, as well as features about what human beings are really like, what actually does motivate them. Right? How do you get them to do what you want them to do, right? Et cetera. And what these things imply about what could possibly lead to order. Right? Right. So, an excellent leader is someone who, on Hanfei's account, is excellent at creating and sustaining a strong, prosperous state that allows for the survival and thriving of its people, and none of that's got anything to do with morality, thinks Hanfei. Right? Now, Shunzi, on the other hand, has got an importantly different idea. Shunzi is pretty explicit. It's impossible to be an excellent ruler but a bad person. Right. That might say a lot about the excellence of any of our recent rulers. But yeah. And Pache Hanfei, rulers need skills beyond merely figuring out the best means to predetermined ends. Right. They need to figure out what the appropriate goals are. That's part of the merit of the political leaders on his account. Right? And he's going to argue that things like virtue and moral cultivation are necessary components for allowing us to understand what goals we ought to pursue. Right? Virtue allows us to cultivate and unify people behind those common goals, convince others that those are the appropriate goals to pursue. It allows one to understand what's necessary for human beings to flourish, right? And how to build a society conducive, right, to that flourishing. Right? Okay, so we've got to continue here. I got two thinkers on very different ends, right, of this continuum. So that, I think, leads to this question of, where should we fall on this? Right? Again, no answers from me, but some questions to help you think about where you might want to fall. Right? So some questions we need to answer, I think, are just what's the goal of politics? Right? Is it achieve X where X is predetermined? Right? What would it mean to achieve fundamental goals of politics? Does this goal change over time? And what's the role of political leaders in discovering, determining, elucidating these goals? Right? And our answers to these questions will help us determine the extent to which political merit consists in really good means-end reasoning, right? That is, figuring out the most effective means of achieving predetermined ends, and to what extent political merit consists in figuring out what goals should be pursued in the first place.